Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions relate to the zero-sum decisions we seem to be making relative to our 5th generation and 4th gen fighting aircraft. My first question is whether or not the manufacturing base has been a consideration in the decision to upgrade the F-15.
Do you want to take the, right. So I think when we looked at the factors that we talked about, you want to maintain a competitive industrial base. You also want to make sure you have weapon systems with the right mix of capacity and capability, and there's a mix between them. And
yeah, we're going to go through the capabilities,
right.
But specifically as to the manufacturing base, is it your view that this decision to make the F-15 upgrades is essential and that the manufacturing base justifies that decision?
I don't know if it justifies it by itself. I just think it's a factor that needs to be considered.
How many F-35As can we build in FY 2020?
I need to get you that number. What's the production rate for the shed?
Yeah, what's our manufacturing capacity for the aircraft that we've spent the better part of several decades getting ready to launch into the skies?
We've got 78 in the budget. I don't know what their capacity is per year.
Procurement cost has been another justification for the decision to purchase fewer F-35s and to have the F-15X options that have been laid out. When you finish the F-15 upgrades with the full complement of targeting pods and sensors and jammers, what's the flyaway cost?
I don't have the specifics on flyaway costs. The maintenance and operating costs of them will still be lower.
We can get to that.
Right.
First, procurement cost. Was it an assumption we made that the procurement cost of the F-15 upgrades would be less than buying more F-35As?
I believe the main driver was in the maintenance and the sustainment costs. The procurement costs were different, but they were not as dramatically different as the others.
The procurement cost of which is lower? How about that?
Of the 4th generation is lower.
So what you're telling me is it's cheaper to buy and upgrade a fourth gen F-15X than it is with the flyaway cost for the F-35A?
I believe so. I can get you those for the record. I know we've put those numbers together for the committees.
I'm looking at an $80 million flyaway cost on the 35A, and then once you lash the necessary, electronic weapons pod and other tech to the F-15X, you're looking at a $90 to $100 million flyaway cost. Does that sound
I'm not
right?
sure what other additional things you're attaching to it. Depends on the mission you're asking it to perform.
I would only the mission set that we would assume when we make these budgetary decisions. Mm-hmm. If you could provide for the record for me the detailed breakdown on not maintenance cost, procurement cost on these two weapon systems, that'd be most helpful.
Sure.
Operational cost. You were making a point about that as well. What's the basis for the view that the F-15X will have a lower operational cost?
So there's an analysis that was done by our CAPE organization that went through and compared the set of them, because you talk about there's the purchase cost, the sustained maintenance cost, and basically the life cycle cost when you think of how long the aircraft lasts. And it also compares it for the different missions we need them to perform. If you're operating in a permissive environment where you're looking at the capacity of the ability of the plane to do strike versus
if you look at a melded rate, what's on the F-15X, what does it cost per hour to fly it?
I don't have those for me. I know that they're available, but I didn't bring them with me to
So as you guys provide, for the record for me, the procurement cost breakdown on the X versus the 35A, it'd be really helpful to have the melded rate on hourly cost to fly the 35A and the F-15X, because I'm looking at some data that says that by 2025, we're going to drive down that cost on the 35A to $25,000 per flying hour with a melded, understanding their different missions, but as a melded rate, and that's a year after the budget says we would have the first operational F-15Xs, so presumably that would be a number consistent with the data that showed that to be $27,000 to $30,000 per flying hour. So if you can break that down for me.
We'd be happy to. It's one of the things we'd ask people to assemble, because following the briefings on the mix, these were some of the common questions, and what we wanted to do is give every one of the committees the exact same set of data so that they understood the data.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised you don't have it. I mean, because there seems to be a pretty deliberate decision to lean into the F-15X, and so I would have thought that that would be really relevant information for a budget discussion. I want to take my final moments to just ask Secretary Shanahan, can you explain the ways in which these budget priorities recognize the changing environment in the Western Hemisphere, Venezuela, and how we're going to make sure we support Southcom effectively?
Yeah. So one of the fundamental assumptions that we've been building into the force mix and the force design is
And
that
if you
they're
can do that in
fungible.
30 seconds, that'll
Yeah.
work, okay?
Yeah, no, I'll do it even more quickly. We've designed this, and the chairman's been extraordinarily helpful here, dynamic force employment, so we can move forces quickly and reconstitute them in areas where there's demand, and to increase interoperability. That flexibility allows us then to surge in the case of SOCOM when they have a different mission or they need to surge for a short period of time, but not to fundamentally change their footprint.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.